We're here to brief you about our undercover operation that we work with our colleagues from throughout Central Florida. Our Internet Crimes Against Children is a task force of local law enforcement agencies and state law enforcement and federal law enforcement agencies. And what we do is we actually in Florida move these operations around from county to county. Our ICAC task force and our colleagues here today are the reason that we keep the people of this state safe, and particularly our children. Let me introduce you. We have Captain Jim McCullough from Sanford Police Department with Investigator Irwin. We have Captain Mike Kosicka. We have Mike is with Seminole PD, or SO. We have Captain Corey Stanish from Sarasota PD, Sergeant Lisa Persius from Tampa PD. I'll probably mess that up. Captain Ruben Delgado from Tampa PD. And they're here today representing not only their agencies, but they're representing the strength that we have in Florida. Make no mistake about it. We all work together to fight crime, and this is but one more example. But today I'm going to give you an overview first, and then we're going to talk about our favorite deviants of the day in just a minute. In this particular operation, there were two phases. The most important phase, obviously, we were in search of child predators. We were in search of deviants who were seeking out children as young as 10 years old to violate their childhood, to sexually batter them. And that's our primary mission. But we don't ever want to miss out on the opportunity to also go after those who are victims in human trafficking. And how do you look for and attempt to identify victims of human trafficking? Well, you have prostitution sweeps. So we had two operations occurring at one time. The ICAC operation, and separate from that was the prostitution-related operation. We're going to focus today, obviously, on the more serious events. And the most serious events are the 19 adults, men, that intentionally engaged what they thought to be young children, very young children, online in order to have sex with them. And then they actually traveled from their home throughout Central Florida for the most part, but one from Jacksonville, to engage these children in sex. 6 of our child predators were from Polk County. 13 were from different communities across Florida, mostly Central Florida. 10 suspects thought that it was a setup and mentioned the fact that they thought it was a setup. But despite the fact, if you walk a little further over here, you can get in front of all the cameras. Despite the fact that they said online they thought it was a setup, they still showed up. And that's how deviant these folks really are. They are so focused on trying to find children, your children, they'll disregard their common sense and attack anyway. They did things such as bring whipped cream and a 6-pack of beer and marijuana. You know, I'm sure it was medical marijuana, of course, because heck, they wouldn't have done this for recreational purposes. Do you hear what I'm saying? They're bringing marijuana to have sex with children. Amazing. And then, of course, there were 19 human trafficking and or prostitution-related cases. But let's get into the ones that we have highlighted here. Please make no mistake about it. Each of these 19 people are dangerous because they not only chatted thinking they were talking to children, but all 19 of them were willing to show up. All 19 were willing to show up and take advantage of children. But for the sake of time and brevity, we are only highlighting a few of them, and you have information on the rest should they be of any particular interest to you. How about Robert Hines? Robert left his fiancée and 6 children to travel to the operation location after communicating online to have sex with a 14-year-old child. Now, I realize some of what I'm going to tell you here today certainly is not worthy of putting on television, nor would we ever want on television. But as reporters of your ultimate story, you need to understand the deviant thought process. So he's running this scam with this child that he thinks he's got ED. And he wanted to see if he really had ED or if it was just his fiancée that he had a problem with. So he wanted to have sex with this child. And he said, oh, by the way, can you invite another one of your 14-year-old girlfriends to be with you when we engage in this sex? He said he liked handcuffs and blindfolds. Well, the good news for him is he got his handcuffs. They're put on him. We didn't give him a blindfold. He resisted when we arrested him. Ultimately, he was tased. And when we got him calmed down, he said, I just want to go home. I want to go home. He was fighting us to get away from us to go home. And then after we had him calmed down and we're going through the booking process, he said, listen, do you think we can hurry up and get through this thing so I can get home and in bed before my fiancée realizes that I'm gone? These people are nuts. And then there's Alan Lovejoy, and you can't make that name up. He's 41. He lives with his mother, and she drove him to the location to have sex. Now, after a thorough investigation, there was no indication that she knew it was a child, so she was not criminally charged. Did you hear me? His mama drove him there to have sex. I mean, what do you say to your son when you're letting him out of the car there? Have a good time? Be safe? Make mama proud? He admitted to the detectives, he said, I deserve this. I knew what it was. But he told what he thought to be young child that age isn't important to me as long as you're clean and safe. He confessed. I still can't get over mama driving him to have sex with anyone. Maybe she qualifies for the all-American mom, someone who will do anything for their child. How about Arnaldo Madera? He thought he was going to have sex with a 14-year-old child. Listen, are you ready for this? He offered to pick the child up from school. He was going to come to the child's school to pick her up. Then he described in graphic, vile detail what he wanted to do to the child. And he also said, and I know everybody feels better about this, that he was not a monster like those other men who wanted to pick up children. He admitted that he understood that there were monsters out there. He needs to look in the mirror. Or how about Joseph Vincent? His preference was 13-year-old girls. Now, we had an undercover operator that was posing as the father of a 13-year-old child. So this guy comes on board and says, hey, if you'll let me have sex with your 13-year-old daughter, I'll bring you $100 and a six-pack of beer so you can drink beer and watch me have sex with your daughter. Yeah, he did. He showed up with a six-pack of beer and the $100. If there's ever any doubt in your mind that they're deviants, there's your sign. How about Robert Wright? We tell them clearly how old we are pretending to be. 12 years old. Now, this ad clearly showed that this child was 12. Robert went online to chat despite being warned over and over and over. He was grooming this child and talked about all the beautiful clothes that he would buy her and all the things that he would do for her. Throughout the content and the communication, before he traveled to meet what he thought was a 12-year-old girl, and he's in his 50s, he would refer to her as little girl, my little girl, my little girl. Now we got him in a little jail cell. We thought he ought to have something little for his efforts. How about Eric Norris? He comes to us from Jacksonville to have sex with what he thinks is a 12-year-old girl. He said during the conversation that he's had sex with other children, a 14-year-old girl, and he has molested children as young as 8, according to him, in his communication with this 12-year-old child. Now, he's having this kind of sexual contact and discussing with what he thinks is a 12-year-old child, bragging about his other sexual encounters. Obviously, this is under more investigation to see if he's just posing and talking or if it's for real. He talked about how he likes child pornography. He was very, very graphic in his language and what he wanted to do. He not only wanted to teach this child about sex, but he wanted to teach her violent sexual activity. Did you hear me? Eric Norris came from Jacksonville thinking he was going to have sex with a 12-year-old child and teach her violent conduct. These folks are scary folks. And then there's Victor. Victor likes 14-year-old children, and he wanted to teach the children how to engage in sexual conduct. Hey, I guess that's reasonable since he's a tutor at Hillsborough Community College, that he would take that teaching over into his perverse environment. He said he likes young children because they don't have, you're not going to believe this. He likes young children, minors, because they don't have STDs and they're virgins. He said that. Here's Matthew Booth. Matthew Booth graduated from high school, as we're told, with a high school GPA beyond 4.0. He's a second-year criminal justice major at UCF, University of Central Florida. He actually received a scholarship from the Florida Sheriff's Association, according to the website. He said he wanted to be a law enforcement officer and specifically a canine officer. He solicited a 10-year-old child. He was very, very graphic in his communication. He sent images and guides and instructional material to this 10-year-old child, as well as sending his body part photographs to this child, what he thought was a 10-year-old child. He said he would teach her and train her. Do you see a common theme here as they're dealing with and grooming these children? I want to teach, I want to train, I want to teach, I want to train. Well, he's not going to have a canine. He's not going to have a career in criminal justice, but he is going to get a first-hand view of the other side of the criminal justice system. He's locked up under no bond at the South County Jail. He provided a full confession. Here's our person that we caught with child pornography. This was not a direct piece of this proactive investigation, but rather it was a response to and a search warrant served as part of our ongoing proactive investigations. Todd Sebring. Let me tell you, this is a very dangerous guy. He was in possession of child pornography, 1 count. He also was charged with promotion of child pornography, 1 count. And you go, 1 count? Well, he not only has the ability to erase, he has the ability to lock you out of his system. You see, he is employed as a computer programmer. And he works for a very large national group. And when we called the business owners and explained our problem, they gave us the code to get in his computer that quick. They were 1,000% cooperative, and they said, we have a very elaborate system. When we give you this code, you've got to get in the computer within the next 3 minutes or the code changes. They totally cooperated. But let me show you what makes these folks dangerous. You look at this and you go, hey, looks like just like the guy next door. He's married to a wife that has a great job, 2 children, 2 boys under 12. He's a soccer coach in Lake Wells. He's a volunteer at his children's elementary school. He was a deacon at his church. He's since resigned. And he's very active in the Lake Wells Football Club. And he's currently the coach of the under 10 or the 10 or under league. Ladies and gentlemen, what you see on the outside is the appearance of an all-American dad. What you see on the inside is a deviant in possession of child porn and distribution of child porn. He moved it on. Because of his incredible abilities, we certainly didn't catch him with all the child porn we suspect that he's been dealing with because he's an eraser. Okay, I've asked my colleagues if they wanted to speak today, and they said, no, that's okay. But they would stand up as a representation of their agency. And you must understand it's because of them and our partnerships that this operation could happen today. It's not just the Sheriff's Office in Polk County, but it's the Tampa Police Department and the Sanford Police Department and Sarasota and Seminole Sheriff's Office and all of our other colleagues that are listed here. But we all stand for any questions you may have.
Any concerns that Mr. Sebring may have molested some of the kids that he coaches?
At this time, there is absolutely no indication of that. It's our thoughts, and we believe that while he is coaching, there are other parents and other coaches around. Now, do we want to hear from if all of a sudden Coach Sebring has taken children on field trips, sleepovers, inappropriate activity? Absolutely. At this point in the investigation, we don't see that, but please understand, when we talk about these cases, you're seeing our instant charges. You're not seeing the detailed follow-up that goes into every one of these cases. But a very important part of this is the media and the social media, because if you know these people and you know of other environments they may have been in, or you know of people they may have victimized, we want to know, because there's nothing that warms our heart more to file more criminal charges against them. We look forward to that.
As a deacon in the church, did he have contact with kids, or did he specifically deal with kids in any way?
Yeah, I can't speak of that, but deacons in the church obviously are well thought of and are traditionally counselors to families as well as running the church business. The church was remarkably upset, as you can understand, and they immediately accepted his resignation. But once again, that shows how dangerous these folks are, because they otherwise live what you would think to be a normal life.
Sheriff, as many of these things as you've done and as much publicity as they get, what kind of insight do you have, maybe talking with these people or seeing the reports about how in the world they think they're going to get away with it?
Do you know, thankfully, they continue to show up. And I say thankfully because if they're not showing up at our undercover operations, then they may be showing up at real children's homes or real children's schools to pick them up or meeting them someplace else. Now, I can tell you that there was a lot of people that engaged us in initial conversation, and when we said that we were children, they said, "Time out, I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with that," which is the appropriate response. There were others, however, that said, "Time out, Polk County, I'm not going there." But we move these operations all around Florida, so don't think that you're evading capture because we happen to do this one in Polk County, because if we didn't get you this time, we'll catch you in another part of the state next time, because we all work together. You see, the cyber world has no city or county or state borders. And we have no city or county or state borders. We will chase you to the ends of the earth, and I have empirical evidence to support that. We just brought a guy back from Australia to face charges in Polk County, Florida, for his deviant conduct. So don't think you can hide someplace else, because we'll come get you and bring you back and give you a jail cell until we can send you to state prison.
And just let me re-ask the question real quick. What do you think is their mental state that thinks, I'm going to get away with this?
I can quote one of these predators that I talked to several years ago at the end of the operation. I sat down with this guy and I said, "Does this look like To Catch a Predator on television?" He said, "Exactly like it." I said, "Do you watch it?" He said, "Every time it's on." I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "My common sense told me it was a police sting, but my desire to have sex with children overrode all that common sense." We catch these folks because their proclivity is to have sex with children. And that's not easy to do because parents, by and large, watch out. When the opportunity comes, they don't want to miss it. But by the same token, when the opportunity comes for us to arrest them, we don't want to miss it either. We do the happy dance every time we arrest one of these. Yes, sir.
On these guys, can you, identify the ones who said, we thought that we suspected it was a sting, and when did they tell you that? Was
Yeah.
this when they were still communicating online or after the arrest?
Yes, we'll be more than happy to do that. It was 10 of the 19, and our PIOs can point them out to you individually when the meeting's over, so that we'll get you that information.
Okay, did they say it while they were,
Oh, yeah.
before they came, during the?
Yes, during the
online
chat,
discussion?
during the chat.
Okay,
But you've got to understand, these are deviants,
yeah,
and they're criminals, and they're after your children, and they're out there every day. And that's why we tell folks, you've got to monitor all of their communication devices, because these folks have charisma and personality to groom children, and they have charisma and personality to groom parents so that they get to them. Yes, ma'am.
Were there any specific sites that they went to, or were they all kind of?
Different social media sites. We used several different sites, but what we used was sites that children would be on, because they go to sites where children are. Now, for example, when people are exchanging child pornography, they can go off by themselves and make it more difficult for us to find them. But in these cases, these folks have to surface to come to where the children are. And that's what makes them so dangerous, is they're coming to where the children are. This is the virtual playground. This is the virtual library. This is the virtual sports park where parents of yesteryear used to say, look out for the people at the parks, at the libraries. Now, they're online looking for your children. And because of the work by these men and women and our colleagues, we stopped these folks from engaging children in inappropriate behavior, and that's what they thought they were going to do during this last week.
And how does this start? Do they usually reach out to you? Do you say something to them first?
They come to us. They come to us. It's just like fishing in a barrel. What they don't realize, that barrel's full of piranha, and it's piranha or us.
You mentioned Sebring, I believe it was, or one of them bragged about having sex with, maybe it was one of the others.
Yes.
Having sex before.
It wasn't Sebring. It was a guy from Jacksonville.
Okay. Do you have any evidence that any of these guys, in fact, have sex?
What we're doing, that is part of the follow-up investigation. This is the proactive investigation, and now the follow-up comes. And part of that follow-up investigation involves all of you, because you're here to make the community aware that these are sexual predators, and if they've been around your child in some venue or some setting that we don't know about at this point in the investigation, because understand, we dealt with them undercover, and we have arrested them, and what we have right now is simply what they've told us and what we've dug up from previous criminal history. Now here's where the community kicks in to help us determine if they have any other knowledge of the evil content and conduct that they may have been engaged in. And I can tell you folks, it is so disgusting and so filthy. I mean, what I've told you, most of, you can't put on television, and I've cleaned it up from XXX to just like PG. You have no idea the way these deviants talk to these perceived children. It's frightening. Questions for any of my colleagues? Any other questions?
We do have a list of those who are up here, if you want to list here, and Sheriff, the beer and the whipped cream were down there, so I don't know if anybody wants it under the.
Do you know I was looking for that because I asked where that was, and I thought Scott said, I don't want him showing that, so hide it. This is not an advertisement for whipped cream. This is one of the tools that one of the predators brought to use on the children. And of course, this is so Dad could enjoy his beer and his $100 bill while he watched a guy allegedly have sex with his 13-year-old child. Do you think there's a problem here? We do. Have a beer and a squirt. Anything else?